And
Hi, everyone. I am so excited that you're here today because we are going to meet another guest that is helping change families and parents and children. And I want you to know about all these people in the world because there are so many people that you can reach out to. And sometimes we forget. And sometimes we're just looking in our little area of the world, but you can contact people who are not in your state or in your area and get help sometimes almost immediately. So I just want you to know that all these people are available and the different things that they're doing so that you have a lot of people that you can contact. So today I have with me Cathy Himlin, and she is a licensed marriage and family therapist and also a licensed professional clinical counselor. She is a member of the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. She's a member of the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts and an affiliate member of the San Diego Family Law Bar Association. She is the president and CEO of Family Connections Therapy and the founder of Himlin Consulting, as well as being a court involved, child centered family therapist with over 25 years of experience, helping families reduce stress and conflict, leading to healthier relationships. And she teaches a class for parents facing rejection by their parents, as well as those looking to learn positive parenting strategies. And we all need those because we do not get to get a manual when we get our kids. And I just want to welcome Cathy with us today. And I want to say, just because I was looking at all your stuff before I started recording this, and it was so helpful to me just in looking at it. So, welcome, Cathy, and please tell us everything about yourself.
thank you, Cynthia, for that welcome. Oh, there's so many things. The main thing for your listeners, though, is what my focus is I work with families who have kids, usually in family law cases, but it could be other situations. You don't have to be court involved. But my specialty is that where a child is rejecting one of the parents out of the two. And
Mm,
so what I go in is I try to help repair that relationship, consider myself a bridge between the child and the parent. And I have a whole methodology I've used that recently, on the past few years, that help ease the children back into wanting to, or at least tolerating in the beginning, contact with a parent that they may not have seen for years.
mm,
So I start with that. And then I also focus on the difference, I think, from what I used to do, because I was trying to take all these different family, what we call modalities or types of therapies that we do with families or kids or adults, is find an attachment based one because the old ways that I was trained in, which I won't
mm,
get into the weeds on those, they weren't working with these families. They're
mhm,
different. These kids are rejecting their parents sometimes for they can't really give me a straight answer. They don't
mhm,
know. They just don't want to be there. So I'm finding, and I've found that there's so many reasons why kiddos reject their parents, young, all the way from 5 year olds and sometimes even four. I've seen as young as four, all the
mm,
way through teens. You would think it was the middle school, you know, adolescent age kiddos, but not. It's younger kids too. And I've been trying to find out like what is it that makes this happen? So it's
mm,
not so simple as some people would think. Because I know I get a lot of parents call me up and go, you know what? It's the co-parent. The co-parent's driving the child against me. They want to keep the child. They don't want me to have a relationship. They've been fully influenced by their other parent the kid has. And yes, that does happen. And
mhm,
yes, I look at things on a continuum, sort of like percentages. And when I'm hearing stories from both parents or a child, I take in their story and I try to just keep it. I hold it up here next to me. I'm holding my hands up for people that are listening. And it's sort of like in these little bags of theory bags on the side of my head. It's the weirdest thing, but this is how I look at things. So I take in all
mhm,
these stories and I'm like, okay, there's a percent here, here. I just don't know yet how much one thing or the other is contributing. But what turns out to be is that it is not always, but everybody contributes to this. I think both parents have a contribution to the rejection, honestly, and not intentional at all. I don't see a lot of malicious intent, even with a co-parent that has custody in some cases. I think it's based on all kinds of other factors, but the child has reasons internally. And it really
Mhm.
depends on their developmental age. So children up to a certain age, let's just say up to, well, it depends on the child, right? So they could be
Mhm.
on track developmentally and how they process the world or not. But I do see even through teenagers where they will view the world in black and white. So that means, of course, um, wrong or right. And so if
Mhm.
you have two parents and you've got a child viewing the world that way, and there's
Mhm.
conflict, as I hit my mic, excuse me, I use my hands a lot, then they're going to name one right and one wrong. And so there could be a lot of reasons why they choose one or the other, but they almost feel like without thinking that they have to choose. So there's
Mhm.
that factor right
Mhm.
there. Then if they have a parent, and I'm going on and on, so if you want to stop me,
No,
but I can
no,
keep
that's
going.
totally
Okay.
fine. Go ahead.
If they have a parent who's anxious, I know that we were talking about that or starting to
Mhm.
before going to.
Mhm.
For instance, and I'll touch on this briefly, that if you have an overly anxious parent or a parent who's more anxious than another parent, doesn't mean they have like a clinical level of anxiety or anything like that. They're just anxious. And the divorce or the custody dispute process, court process especially, is so triggering, is so traumatizing to families. So even the most, I'm air quoting, normal person who has normal behaviors, never had mental health issues, never even had to go to therapy or whatever, will start to be triggered, get more anxious, get more depressed.
Mhm.
So when you have a parent who's going down that path and ramped up emotionally, because it's a threat. When you're in a divorce situation, it is a threat. I'm going to hit that again. And they do this. So the child may navigate towards the parent who's more anxious, who's
Mhm.
more despondent or depressed or more needy. The
Mhm.
the parent just has to say something like, "Are you sure it's okay? Here, let me give you the secret phone. And then you can call me if there's something wrong." And there's no abuse on the other side, no domestic violence history, nothing. And they do just that little teeny act of
Mhm.
protection because they're anxious about it. Maybe it was some
Mhm.
childhood trauma in their background, and they just don't feel like they don't have control anymore of what's going on with the child because they're going to the other parent's house. The
Mhm.
child picks up on this anxiety and they read it, and I'm saying all ages, as there must be something wrong at the other parent's house. And eventually that can translate into a full rejection because they will say to me, some of these kids, and I've been on some of these cases, I don't know why, but for instance, but because my parent has to be supervised with me and know you that I can't see them alone, then there must be something wrong. And
Mhm.
in a few cases like that, there was actually nothing wrong. It was just abundance of caution to prevent allegations.
Sure.
And the child was convinced that something must have happened that they couldn't remember. So therefore, they had to reject that parent. So I know
Oh,
I
wow.
listed a bunch of stuff, but
Mhm.
there's so many reasons and they're internal to this child and how they interpret their parents, the situation, their developmental stage, and then add the layer of any type of parental conflict that they
Mhm.
witness or are around, or here's a love, I love this one. I call it the blacktop conversations.
Mhm.
It's when children of all ages start talking to their peers, because if we've got stats, the old stats were like 50+% of all families end up in divorce
Mhm.
or split if they're not, married. There's a lot of kids with stories and they
Yeah.
start talking at school.
Mhm.
So I've actually had children, multiple cases, they've come to me, well, this is going to happen. My dad's going to hit me because my friend was hit by their dad. And
Oh.
no domestic violence, no abuse ever. And so this child's rejecting this dad because of a friend's story, because they don't have the brain development to discern that just because
Mm.
a friend said it was going to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen to you, because they're too young to understand that. And they're
Yeah.
confused, and their parents are so emotionally off.
Mhm.
Everybody gets like this.
Mhm.
Everybody I know, normal to have this response. They're not really realizing what the children are going through. So they sort of are withdrawn in a way. Most parents withdraw in a small
Mhm.
way, not totally.
Mhm.
And the kids pick up on this. So they're going internal, they're reaching out to friends, they're reaching to people they probably shouldn't to find advice about what to do or to understand and make sense of this, right?
Mhm.
It's
Oh,
a lot.
yeah.
Like I just
Oh,
all this stuff, but it's
well,
so
yeah.
complicated. It's
Yeah.
not simple. And it's different in every family I work with, some combination of something.
Well,
So,
and it's reminding me, so I got divorced 16 years ago. I mean, it's been a long time. And it was the worst time of my life. And I would guess, and I wanted to leave him, but I would guess anyone would say that that's one of their lowest times in their life when something like that happens. And I tried to make it as least conflict filled as possible. But yes, my feelings were on edge. His
right,
feelings were on edge. The kids, were upset. And I am like, my emotions are very even. Like, I don't have huge ups and downs. I don't yell. I rarely get angry. I just don't have these kinds of experiences. And during that time, I would have been more like that. And I'm trying to think about, I probably, and I was more anxious and everything just felt personal to me.
right,
My my kids didn't reject me, but they would really go more towards what their dad wanted. And I now, after looking at your materials, I realize it was because he was more emotionally needy or emotionally unstable, where I was more independent and was able to handle myself. And actually, my oldest son, who was an adult, said to me, "Dad needs me and you
right,
don't."
right,
And so he, as an adult, realized that that is what was happening, is that my
hmm,
dad needs me and you don't need me. So I'm going to go that direction. But little
exactly.
kids, that's probably why they can't say,
Hmm,
because it is like they realize in themselves that this parent is needy and needs
right,
them more than another. And so, but it didn't hurt me any less that they were doing what he wanted
right,
because, he was going to get upset or whatever. And now that they're both adults, they don't, they're not following, what he says as much, because now as adults, they are seeing it for what it is
right,
and seeing the damage, even that he is doing to them now, because now that they're
yeah,
adults, he can treat them differently. I was sort of the buffer. They didn't
right,
experience any of his problems because I experienced all the problems, and they
right,
were like, he just seemed perfect to them. And I was glad about that as I lived with him. I wanted them to not get the brunt of his anger or whatever it was me. But when I left, then it had to go somewhere. And
right,
even though it was still sort of towards me, when I'm not within reach anymore, or he can't control me, then it
right.
turned to I will control them.
Yep.
And so it was really an interesting dynamic. And it just makes me feel better just looking at your materials. That was, even though that's not happening anymore, it makes me feel like, okay, that personal sadness of, oh, why does he get everything and I
Yeah.
never get what I want? I realize now that I didn't have to feel that way. I was taking it too personal, and it did turn out okay. It's just when you're in the thick of it, it's just
Yeah.
very painful. But I'm so glad that you're out there teaching parents this information, because I would have loved an adult to walk alongside me who could help me figure out what was really going on and help my kids too. We didn't
Right.
get any help during that time. And I'm so glad that there are people like you doing that. And we didn't go to court about child custody or anything, because my daughter was 17. She was
Right.
the youngest. And she, according to our courts in Kansas anyway, she could decide for herself who she went to visit and when she went to visit. She could drive. So,
Right.
I'll drive to mom when I want to, I'll stay with dad when I want to, or whatever. So there was no rules or anything where we were fighting about that. So that
That
part was
helps. Yeah.
nice. Yeah. So we weren't
Yeah.
we weren't going in the court system fighting about all this stuff, but I still now wish I would have gotten help, just so that they would have a better understanding of what was going on. I would have had a better understanding. Their dad wouldn't have been involved because he wouldn't go for stuff like that. But,
Right.
we could have gotten some help understanding it. So I'm glad that you're doing that. One of the things that you had mentioned ahead of time too is that you help, like, maybe I don't know if healing was the right word, but you help parents to get and their kids to, even if they're the rejected one, you're kind of helping them with parenting skills
Right.
or helping them to get along better. So what does that look like?
Well, what I do in the beginning is I focus a lot on, I'm going to throw some acronym or symbols at you, not symbols, but whatever, letters. EFFT, emotion focused family therapy, is what I based a lot of this on, which also some of its derivatives of Gottman, his emotion coaching.
Mm,
So I use the emotion coaching from EFFT, which is different than EFT, emotional focused therapy, but where it's an attachment based family therapy. And so I teach ways to reach children through their feelings and in the context of their developmental state and their perspective to just there's so many different words I use or phrases like get into their world, less of let me tell you how you're wrong and how your narrative, because narrative is a big thing. The false narrative, fake narrative is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in these
mhm,
cases. It isn't that the kids have a fake narrative, it's that they've developed a narrative, even if it sounds like the co-parent, that is their narrative now. So instead of fighting the narrative, we want to address the feelings around the narrative because that's the
mhm,
door in, and that's the basis to emotion coaching. Is we need to enter a child's life through their emotional experience because they need to feel heard and
mhm.
seen and understood. And if
Yes.
they feel heard, seen, understood, or any combination of those things, they're going to open up more. But if they feel like you're fighting them and telling them they're wrong, like in your situation, like if you went to your kids and say, stop listening to your dad, he's got a lot of problems, and you focused in that kind of energy, that area with them, they would be more up to reject you more. So you could actually
Mhm,
make it worse. And I
mhm,
see people that have been rejected, parents, they're so caught up in the litigious part of the court battle, the
mhm,
fighting, whatever it is. It doesn't even need to be about custody. It's just the fighting of it. It just sets
mhm,
people up to be on edge, like you said.
mhm,
It Even if they don't say anything about the court situation or whatever battle they're having with the other parent, it's almost like it's coming out of their skin. Like the
mhm,
emotions are just present. So it's like, how do I equate it? Like a porcupine with their quills out. Like if when you're with a child and you're this taller porcupine with the quills out, you're going to look a little
mhm,
scary. Your
mhm,
presence is just going to leak out into this interaction and they're not going to feel the warm and fuzzy that they need. So
mhm,
when you can separate out, this is a big thing I teach them, which feels very simple, but believe me, most of them can't do this yet, and I
mhm,
work really hard to help them. Is over here in one part of the room is the court experience, the fighting, your co-parents relationship, all these things that are going on that's you don't like, the whole
mhm,
divorce or custody dispute process. And over here is your relationship with your child, and we need to draw a really strong line down the middle. Like
mm,
walk into that room, walk into the, like, drive up to the school, pick up your kid, and before you do, picture putting court and your co-parent up on this tree and hang it up, you're stressed, just put it someplace else and try to be fully grounded and present with your child in that moment. That would reduce like 50%. I don't have a real stat, but just
mm,
feels like 50% of the problems I see in my cases
mhm,
because of all the litigious issues. So I try to help rejected, I call them rejected parents, but I also call them
mhm,
peripheral parents. I could get into that if you want me to, because
mhm,
they're on the periphery of the child's life to, separate that out. Because if I get them in the right mindset, then they can be open to validating feelings. But
mhm,
if they're viewing their child as disrespecting them, being a little mini me of their co-parent, and they say things like that to me, that's very negative, and it does, that energy just comes in. And what they don't understand, like I said earlier, is doing that or just physically being upset before you see your child and not doing something to ground yourself first pushes them away. And that has
mhm,
nothing to do with your co-parent, and it has nothing to do with your kid, but your kid's going to gravitate towards a parent who isn't scary usually.
mhm.
Sometimes they'll gravitate towards a scary person to try to get them not to be scary. So it's not,
Yes.
again, it's not black and white. I can't
Mhm,
give you a hard fast rule, except when we access our kids through their emotions. That's it.
mhm.
That's the magical key that works a lot of the time. Nothing's
Yeah.
100%. So what I teach them is validating language, attunement skills. I do this umbrella of attunement skills. We want to attune to the child's world, emotions, perspective, developmental state, put everything in
Mhm,
perspective. I teach them how to validate them, one issue at a time. Like
Mhm.
when I'm doing therapy, I gather a little list from the kiddos of why they don't want to see their parent. And if they can articulate things, that's the first thing we work on. And we develop scripts about validating statements. I help them develop those, showing like this is emotional focused family therapy, emotion coaching, just a little
Mm.
thumbnail sketch of it, validating statement. And we get three pieces of evidence. We go, because like you didn't want to leave school today and you wanted to go for a play date instead, that would be, I get why you would do that because you miss seeing your friends. That's your
Mhm.
first because your second one, you really want to spend time. You're just tired after school. You don't want to have to do homework. And three, because you haven't seen your friend in a long, long time. I mean, I'm just riffing right now. You just
Mhm.
come up with like three pieces of understanding of what
Yeah.
they're doing. And then you give them a few other statements as part of that whole process.
Yeah.
So validating, reflective listening, validating, and having empathy, and that's what I teach in the crux. Like that's my overall arching umbrella. So because they
Okay.
don't, parents are so offline with what they're going through, they don't realize what the kids need.
Mm.
And I really, really wish, and so it's my wish someday, I just always have to put this out in the universe, so to
Mhm.
speak, that we could change the family law system because they are not child centered. It's parent fighting
Mhm.
centered, and the family law
Yep.
system needs to be child centered. If we could get there, then all that fighting could go down. I'm not saying it's going
Yes.
to go away. Again, nothing's 100%,
Right.
but I am so convinced that if we really did focus on what the child actually needs in these
Mhm.
moments, not
Mhm.
whether we have, and I'm not going to get into custody planning, I don't do that, but not whether it's 50-50, 20-80, week on, week off. Stop
Mhm.
looking at that. Let's look, what does the child need right now? How old
Right.
is the child? Who's been
Yeah.
staying with the child for a while? Don't start that type of thing like the court orders it on Monday and yes, start it this next weekend. And you've just done an abrupt, 180-degree turnaround.
Mm.
What was going on this child's whole life? That
Yeah.
causes rejection too. We need to have
Mhm.
a very slow step up plan if we're going to change custody. So sorry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
That
lot of
there is a
things.
bunch. I can't
Yeah,
even
it's
imagine
a
the
lot.
whole thing.
But
Now
but
you
that's
have
how I work with them.
this family course. So is that like, do they watch a video? Is the course a live course? And then how does
Yes.
that then like then the family and the children work with you, or how does that work?
Oh, well, this is just a parenting class. So what I did is I wrote it specifically for parents who are rejected because I didn't
Mm.
see anything out there like what was out there.
Sure, I've
It's
never heard of
live,
it.
right.
Mhm.
It's high conflict, live interactive, and you won't find a lot of high conflict parenting classes either that aren't recorded. Nothing against the recorded classes, but what I
Mhm.
do and what's part of what I do that I didn't say, part of the teaching is very experiential, which means we role play. So I
Mm.
tailor it to them. They get to give me certain situations and I help them build scripts. And then
Oh,
I role
I
play
love
being
it.
their kid because I need to get them to react. I mean, I can't perfectly be their child, but they give
Sure.
me a general idea. Like if we've got a kid yelling at them, I'll actually yell at them. I'll warn them. I'm going to
Mhm.
be your kid. I'm going to yell at you because what I want to do is trigger their limbic system, which
Yeah.
and get them upset. Because if they get
Mhm.
upset with me, they'll be able to do this in the room with their child if they get upset. You
Mm.
know what I mean? So we do
Yes,
things
that's
like that.
perfect.
I try to get it as close. So we do a lot of role play and I have exercises we do. We role play that. I do demonstrations and I break this all down like little building blocks along the way before
Mhm.
we even get to the bigger emotion coaching piece. Because I find, again, these parents are so, when I say offline, I picture like your frontal lobe, right? Your right and left
Mhm.
brain just like boom, like off the track, like a train.
Mhm.
And I really need to get them calm so they can start accessing the stuff. So I slow it down in the beginning. It's a little slower, and then we ramp up as soon
Yeah.
as they realize, hey, this isn't about talking about your co-parent. This is about
Yes.
focusing on your child's relationship. So it's about right now. I'm tinkering with it right now. Right now, I'm offering it individually. It's an 8-hour class. I have a substance abuse module. I can say that phrase that I'm adding because someone asked for it. So
Mhm.
I'm sticking
Sure.
that in. I'm going to be adding a developmental model, or module, but for now it's like an 8-hour class, but it can be tailored to anybody individually up to 12 hours. And then I will be running a group again. I started it as a group. It's just
Mhm.
very difficult to get people across the country to show up at the same time. And
Yes.
so
Well, and
I'm
is it so this is my trouble too when I do workshops and stuff. And
right.
so I know that we're talking about confidentiality in a way, but are they recorded? So if they miss, they can watch what happened?
Yeah, no, I don't record. I
Yeah.
don't
So
record.
that, and that's
Yeah.
helpful to the confidentiality part. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is difficult to find a time, but I totally
Right.
get it. Now, I'm going to be putting your information in the show notes, but they'll be able to go and I don't know, purchase it or sign up to talk to you about purchasing it somehow through the
Right.
stuff that I put on my show notes.
Right. So in himlinconsulting.com, I have a free consultation, 15-minute consultation.
Mhm.
People can consult with me on how they want to work with their case, or they can take my class and they can tell me, hey, I've been court ordered to take a 6-hour class, an 8-hour class, a 12-hour class,
Mm.
and I will tailor it personally to them
Oh,
if we're going to do the
perfect.
one-on-one. There is going to come a time when I will offer the group eventually. I'm negotiating with someone to partner so I can put it through, possibly hoping this works, a
Mm.
nonprofit so we can access more people as
Yeah.
well.
Oh,
But right
that's
now
good.
it's online. It's live and
Okay.
online. So, and I don't have recordings. It's all me.
Mhm.
I was
Oh, that's
thinking,
great.
yeah, I was thinking of recording it because I've got all this content. And there may be a time where I might record little snippets, but if I record it and I show it for class and no one's watched it, then I'm gonna have to say it anyway. So I don't know. I'm trying to
Exactly. I
figure out
know.
what works best for people. So
I'm trying to figure those same exact things out. And you are writing a book right now that won't be released for a while, but tell us a little bit about that.
And the book I'm writing is maybe going to be called The Rejected Parent or Rejected Parent. And so it is about parents who are rejected by their children, especially in family law and dependency cases, kiddos in foster care. And exactly what I've been saying, it's trying to help them see that there's so many reasons why a kid will reject them and to look at it from a different perspective, just change, reframe, and change this whole
Mhm.
viewpoint. And then how can you reconnect with them again? Like, what can we do?
Mm.
And I'm
Mhm.
translating this into book form because I want to reach so many people. There's
Yeah.
some really simple things that we don't think of when we're in crisis that if we
Mhm.
just took a minute, and it's not that easy, granted, not easy at all because we're offline again when we're in the middle of a trauma or in a system like family court, but to just take, there's some certain things you can do that you can even implement immediately. Like you can read
Mhm.
one of my chapters. I've got my first 3 chapters just completed, polished, and I have the whole manuscript done. But if you read the first 2 chapters, you probably get a ton of things out of there you can implement that day. It
Oh,
isn't like a
wow.
very difficult process. It's simple, simple skills that I'm going to
Mm.
teach. It's
That
based
is
on
going to be
like
wonderful for parents. I love that so much. Well, is there anything else that you would like us to know before we go? I know, like I said, I'm going to put all your information in the show notes so people can find you and get involved with this class if they want to and be following you. I don't know if you have some social media presence, but if they're
yes.
following you, then they're going to be able to see when this book comes out.
Yes.
So, anything else you want parents to know before we end today?
Couple of things. Well, I do have a newsletter called The Rejected Parent. So I
Mm.
do send out content, which is partially from the book that I'm writing that I send out every other week. It comes out, you can be on my mailing list. You sign up through my website, go on LinkedIn, I'm on there too. But the thing I really want parents to understand beyond those things is that one of my big pet peeves is parents get separated from their children for months, years, and
Mm.
they think that they don't have a right to have contact. They don't try. So if you're in a situation, any of the parents out there, that you haven't seen your child or you're just starting a divorce process or custody dispute or something's happened, find a way, even if it's in supervised contact with your child, because you do not want to let more than a few weeks to a month go. The longer you let that go, the bigger the false narrative, the lies that are
Mhm.
being told, if there's anything being told, they grow and they turn into reality because they have nothing to counter it.
Yeah.
So if all they have is this, I call it an avatar in their head of you and their memory or some memory that's being given them or told to them of, the upset from other people, from the other parts of the family, then
Mhm.
that's all they have. That becomes their reality and you're like absent. So
Mhm.
try, really keep trying. If you
Yeah.
if you've been rejected, the court case is closed, you've got no custody, keep sending birthday cards, keep sending Christmas, Hanukkah,
Mm.
Easter, whatever holidays
Yeah.
you celebrate, reach out, send presents. And one thing I do talk about is if you feel like your presents, your cards are going to get ripped up or destroyed or put in the trash, and you can afford it, buy little things that are meaningful, take pictures or whatever you do. It doesn't have to be like big elaborate things. Those usually don't work anyways.
Mhm.
Duplicate them and keep them. Keep your card, keep two cards, keep have two presents, two cards, send one card, and then keep it. So that day, like I'm gonna guess your kids were post 23 or 25, maybe when
Mhm.
they, okay, there's a reason because that's the magical age. So if your kids are
Mm.
gonna come back around and you feel like you've lost them, you may not have, because they may wake up again and you will have these things to give them that may have been thrown out or destroyed. And
Oh,
then you
that's a
can
good
show
idea.
them that you were always there. And if you're always reaching out, you show up to those graduations, you show, unless you have a restraining order, show up to everything. It doesn't mean that you go up to them and embarrass them in front of their family or friends, but
Sure.
show up and
Mhm.
show them because you will. One thing you don't want is for them to come to you or say something later in their 20s and say you were never there, even if it wasn't your fault that you weren't there.
Yeah. Oh
So
my
keep
gosh,
trying.
that
Just
is
keep trying.
such good advice. I love that. And in my 31 years of working in school counseling, I had many of these situations going on, and I didn't work with the family in that way, but I remember just the pain of the kids and the families that would reach out to me, telling me about their painful situations. And
Right.
so I'm so glad there's somebody that's actually getting in there and helping that, because I would have wanted to, but it was just beyond my scope of what I was doing. But we definitely need people doing that. So I appreciate you so much for
Thank
doing that,
you.
and also for being with us so that we can know more about it. And we're definitely going to be watching for that book. I
Oh, thank
will
you.
have it on my shelf so I can help kids with it as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this, Cynthia. It's really,
Oh,
really
you're so
great.
welcome. Thank you.